not required to, but if you have access to it and would like to follow along, we're currently in the OneNote file of Modal Node System, MNS Presentation 1227, OneNote Mirror Inverse Intervals versus Negative Scale Degree Intervals. List of presentations thus far over here. We plan on adding plenty more to them shortly, however. Also note, in this OneNote presentation, we could spend all of our time practicing the music theory side of things, but we also have another similarly numbered and named presentation where we build these tables in Excel, practicing Excel skills, music skills, and visualizing of table skills all at the same time. We're going to be continuing on with our discussion of intervals now, but we're going to look at the directionality, which is a problem. And therefore, we want to first think about the concept of what we want to keep in mind, how we want to visualize the fretboard, what is our objective, and how can we think about the tools given to us, naming conventions being the tools, imperfect tools as they are, to give us what we need to map out the territory of the fretboard. So the best way to visualize the fretboard is as a territory, as a map of the territory, similar to the globe. We have destination continent locations on it, 7 of them, like the continents on the globe. And we have 5 non-destination locations, which are going to be like the oceans. We go through them to get to the destination locations. Our head is above the fretboard in space, basically. It's above this low or heavy E string, the one closest to the ceiling. And we note that the fretboard like spins around in a circle. It spins, and we're going to give it 12 degrees of rotation, typically working on the 4th degree of rotation, which we call the collection of notes that are derived from the C majors, right? Now, although we're working in that collection of notes all the time, remember that if I shifted that forward to C sharp, to D sharp, the whole thing would shift forward just like the planet spinning around. And therefore, once I know my collection of notes, I no longer want to define them by the note names, but rather by the permanent continent names, the things that don't change relative to the position or viewpoint that we're taking. Nashville number system basically does that. If you're familiar with that, that's basically a node-based system giving a number to the nodes or the modes. 1 being the Ionian, the 4 being the Lydian, the 3 being the Phrygian, the 6 being the Aeolian, and so on and so forth. Now, the naming conventions that we have based on scale degrees cause us problems trying to pull us out of the optimal way to visualize the fretboard. That's what we have to work with, and so that's what we have to be careful of. So remember that if we have our continents on a globe, I could get from North America to Asia multiple different ways. I can go around this way, or I can go across the middle. But our system is even easier than that because it's like a racetrack. It's like a block. It's all in a circle. That means that all I need in order to define what is happening distance-wise is to give me the distance term, which we have 2 different ways to do. Either we have continent to continent, which is going to be the node to node, right? Or we have continent and ocean. The oceans are in between them sometimes, which would be like note to note. But we also have directionality because I could go backwards. So that's the problem. I have to take that into account because the current system really names things as though we're like on a NASCAR system. I think they only go clockwise, right? We only go one way. You can't go the other way or else all the cars will hit you. But when you're looking at this system, there's only one person driving the track, so we could theoretically go backwards or counterclockwise. Now, we also have an issue of, although with the same pitch happens, or as we go around, you're in the same key, it also goes up an octave and down an octave. We'll introduce that problem later, but just from a general interval standpoint, we're going to think about it as going around in a circle, now introducing the idea that we could go negative around in the circle. Now, we touched on that last time, but last time we basically mainly just thought for the naming convention that we usually have with the inverse distance. So let me show you what the problem here is. If I'm on the 5 here and I want to go to let's say the 2, how do I get to the 2? Well, I could count clockwise by going 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 4 continents up, which are equivalent to modal half steps up, Or if I make that the 1, the scale degree term, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this would be the 5th scale degree if I make that the 1. If I add the notes, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it would be 7 continent and ocean, which are equivalent to the notes up. What if I want to get from this 2 back to the 5? Well, we could retrace our steps, which means we're going in the negative direction. Note-wise, that would be negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? Negative 7 backwards. Or continent-wise, it would be negative 1, 2, 3, 4 modal half steps backwards, which you would think from a scale degree would be from this point. That would be the 1, negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the negative 5th scale degree. Now, some people do use negative scale degrees, but most people don't. Most people wouldn't know what you're talking about if you say it's a negative 5th scale degree. That's the problem. So really the only thing we have is going forward. I have to keep going forward around the block, which means it would be 1, 2, 3 modal half steps forward to get back to here. Or if I make that the 1, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I'm measuring from this point, I really have to call it something that's related to a 4th scale degree, even though really I'm thinking about it going backwards this way, which means it should be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 negative 5th scale degree. So that's the problem. We could choose either of those methods, but we need some method to take into account directionality. So let's do our same kind of idea that we looked at last time. If I'm going from this Mixolydian and then I'm going to this C here, let's color them here. I'm going to go from here to here. How do I do that? Well, the distance I can see is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 notes. That would be equivalent to continents and the oceans, right? If I look at just the continents, counting from this point, it would be 1, 2, 3 continents up, or 3 nodes or modes up, third modal half step, which would be the 4th scale degree if I make this to 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4th scale degree, so we could name then that a 5 note away perfect 4th is what we typically call it. Now, what if I measure from here going back to here? Notice again, we don't really have a name for that, but you would think that if I make this the 1, it would be a negative scale degree. It would be 1 and then negative 2, 3, 4, right? It would be a negative 4th. It would be a negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 note away, negative 4th. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, negative 4th. But again, if you say a scale degree going negative, people don't really know what you're talking about. So you almost have to just kind of drop the idea of a negative scale degree. It doesn't really make sense as well, because you can't really take like 7 minus the scale degree to see the other side, the other direction. In other words, if I was on like this 2 and I go up 1, 2, 3, if I go 3 up, then I could figure out how long it would go to the inverse direction by saying there's 7 steps minus 3. So if I went 3 up and then I wanted to get to the same point going the other way, it would be 7 minus 3, which would be 4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, going the other direction. But if I make that the 1 from a scale degree, 1, 2, 3, 4, now this is the 4th, 7 minus 4 doesn't get me what I need to go the other direction around. I also don't have an easy way to apply out this concept of the naming conventions with the major, minor, and perfects, right? If I say this is going in the negative direction, 1, 2, 3, 4th, the negative 4th scale degree, is it a major, a minor, or a perfect? I'd have to kind of figure out what it was going forward to figure out the name convention of it going backwards. So from a practical standpoint, then, instead of using negative scale degrees, we end up having to basically count the number backwards. What I would recommend to say, I could see this going this distance forward would be 7, 5, 6, 7, 7 note away perfect 5th. But I'm also going to say that the perfect 5th could also be a negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I could say a negative 5 note away perfect 5th. that's a way for me to still just use a perfect fifth, because the perfect fifth then always gets me to from a C to a G, or from an Ionian to a Mixolydian. But I can also give myself directionality. Am I going forward 7 note away, perfect fifth, or am I going backwards 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, -5 note away, perfect fifth? That also gives you the ability to go above an octave. So what if I'm going 7 plus 12, an octave up? Well, I think the easiest way to identify that is to say I'm going a 7 plus an octave, or 7 plus 12, perfect fifth, up, right? So I think the idea of introducing the actual steps you're taking is the best way to do it. And then all you can do is just memorize the negative number of steps and realize that when I'm saying it's a perfect fifth, that fifth doesn't help me at all to go into the reverse direction, because I can't take 7 minus 5 to see the other side around the block, because the fifth is based on a scale degree when it should be based on a distance term. All right, so that's going to be the general idea.